Hello and welcome to our fourth episode of Eyes on Germany, a video testimonial series on Germany's Council presidency. The presidency started on the 1st of July and lasts until the end of 2020. My name is Jeanette Süß. I'm European Affairs Manager at Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, a liberal and pro-European political foundation based here in Brussels. With Eyes on Germany, we want to shed light on how other local, national and European actors see Germany's policy making in the EU. Today I'm talking to Sophie Pornschlegel, who is Senior Policy Analyst at European Policy Center, a think tank based here in Brussels, and hence a sound observer of the EU bubble. So Sophie, only some weeks to go that Germany can still call the shots of the Council of the EU. So whenever a big fish like Germany takes over the Council presidency, expectations are very high as there's a plethora of policy issues at stake. So in general terms, do you think that Germany did well and performed well and has lived up to these expectations?
So thank you, and I think the question you ask is not an easy one because the expectations for Germany were extremely high when they took over the Council presidency on the 1st of July, obviously in the middle of a crisis. So if you look at it from a realpolitik perspective, if you look at it from the context, then you can see that it was extremely challenging. You had COVID-19 hitting Europe, but you also had lots of other deadlines, such as Brexit and at the end of the year, but also the multi-annual financial framework, which is the EU budget. So they didn't have much space to actually set their own policy priorities. And if you look at it now, in December, there was a huge win with the recovery fund that they agreed on in July 2020, with really a historic decision to let the EU Commission borrow money from capital markets, which means that was really a success. But then the fall came and it was a bit more difficult.
So next to the handling of the current corona pandemic, which is obviously a huge topic Germany had to deal with, Germany fixed 5 policy priorities. It wanted Europe to become stronger and more innovative, to become more fair, to become more sustainable, to be a Europe of security and common values, and to become a stronger Europe in the world. And even if the last days are still to come, let us take stock now. In which policy areas do you think Germany performed well, and where would you consider Germany even failed?
So I already mentioned the one area where they were really successful, and I think that's the recovery package. And they also managed to find a deal on the multi-annual financial framework, which is good because it's not an easy topic. And you see that Europe is extremely fragmented. So the fact that they found a deal is positive. However, and you always have the caveat, and it's that the rule of law conditionality they proposed was more of an anti-corruption clause, and the parliament then negotiated to make sure that it was a real rule of law conditionality. So in that sense, they really didn't propose something that was strong enough. So on rule of law, I would say that they haven't done well. And it's the same for the twin transition priorities of the European Commission. So if you look at the multi-annual financial framework, it's one of the biggest package, the most important budget, because it will define the priorities for the next 7 years. And for instance, on the common agricultural policy, they haven't been particularly forward-looking. They still fund a lot of energy-intensive farming. They said that they made a success because there is 30% that will be invested in green projects, but it's not coherent with the rest. So really trying to have coherent policies to make sure that we have these transformative processes towards a more sustainable and more climate-friendly EU, I think they didn't do enough in that sense.
Let's see about that, yeah. So rule of law is one core value of the EU. However, in light of populist voices and hate speech in the internet, disinformation and conspiracy theories gained ground, especially in times of crisis. The Liberal Commissioner Vera Jourova just presented its European Democracy Action Plan, containing measures to strengthen media freedom and pluralism. And this is also one of the core issues for our foundation, who works in more than 60 countries in the world to foster the freedom of the press and pluralism. What could Germany do and has done so far to fight disinformation and especially engage more citizens in an open dialogue about how the EU should look like?
You mentioned the European Democracy Action Plan that just came out also in December 2020. It's good that there is a stronger awareness of the European Commission that this really is an issue, and the action plan wants to fight for free and fair elections, for media pluralism, and to fight disinformation. I think that's very good. However, it's only 3 points out of many more that make up a democracy as such. So there's nothing about corruption, there's nothing about the rule of law. The European Commission still has a rule of law toolbox, so that's good as well. But at least it shows the awareness. What Germany as such can do is, of course, to support the European Commission in its effort and to make sure that there is also efforts at national level and to kind of build up the pressure as such. One of the things I wanted to mention, and I didn't mention before, was the IT security law. And I think there it shows also the lack of coherence between some of the things that were said and the actual policy proposals that came. It would undermine civil liberties at EU level if that was made to happen. And it's about making sure that governments have access to end-of-end encryption. And I think that's a topic that has been overlooked very much. I think it's a core policy area to look at when you try to protect civil liberties. And I think that's also part of this whole democratic package.
So bringing in European citizens and foster their rights is also one of the topics that should be discussed during the Conference on the Future of Europe. What do you think about this initiative so far?
So this was one of the objectives also of the German Council presidency, to start off the Conference on the Future of Europe, which had been announced in July 2019 by Ursula von der Leyen. Since then, nothing much has happened. We still haven't started. Obviously, COVID-19 came in between, but still the big issue is still the leadership question, and the EU national governments cannot find an answer. They're not really sure who should lead the process. And the scope of the conference also is very unclear. So we're not sure whether this should be a simple EU communications exercise where you explain the EU to citizens and try to have nice conversations with them, or if it really should be a deliberative process. And in that case, the outcome, of course, is still open. And to have a real deliberative process, this would also mean that you would have to have a real methodology. And with 440 million EU citizens, that's quite something to make sure that there is a representativity that is there. So I think there needs to be much more efforts put into that conference, and it should start relatively soon. Also knowing that we're not sure which topics they should discuss. It was a plethora of topics beforehand, and then COVID hit and said that they should focus on health. But I think they need to be sure about what they want to get out of this conference before it starts off. It's unclear whether it will start during the German Council presidency. As it looks, it will be something for next year.
Something that the Portuguese have to take on then now. So now it's up to you. If you had one wish free, what policy issue should still be put on the table by Germany's Council presidency, what would that be?
I have a lot of wishes. I think one of the biggest topic I would put on the table is really this democracy topic and strengthening European values as such. And one particular niche topic would be to have a European agency for citizenship education, because I think it's EU citizens first and foremost that live European values and that can stand up for them. So if we don't have European citizens who are actually defenders of democracy, then we will have a long-term problem with the rule of law. And we've seen that the current discussions around the rule of law and the different sanction mechanisms are not necessarily efficient or working very well. So I think that the EU should definitely invest much more in its EU citizens, because they're the core of the European Union.
So thanks, Sophie, for this policy pitch then. I think we'll keep an eye on the last days of Germany's presidency together. And yeah, thanks for having given us your take and your suggestions on Germany's current performance in EU policy making. And first and foremost, stay safe.
Yeah, thank you.